What is shaking, guys? It is your boy Marc Cordon, Golden Mike, episode 67. The good thing about 67 episodes is you don't have two people on the episode. You get three people on the episode to crush this mofo. And here's the thing. It seems like we're having like this like love fest from the people who met in New York a couple weeks ago, because we had Alonto on yesterday. You guys watched that episode, right?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Love Alonto.
we had our brother on Alonto yesterday. Now we got Rachel and Kyle Wright from the Wright Wellness Center. Think of these three pillars: relationships, mental health, and sex. Sex.
I love it.
Sex. How do you say sex, Kyle? Sex. Oh, nice. And this is the thing. Stick around for this, because what we're going to be talking about today is why we can't communicate in our freaking relationships. I'm going into my early 40s right now, and I'm still trying to figure those pieces out. Even with these positive psychology degrees and all this counseling stuff behind me, still can't figure it out when it comes down to that. Why does it seem so hard? And hopefully you guys will make it so easy today. So we got a couple things that we're going to discuss today with Rachel and Kyle Wright. For those of you who haven't met me, my name is Marc Cordon. I'm the founder of the Make Money coaching program. Rachel and Kyle, this is the time to forward this if you need time.
Already done, baby.
I'm the founder of the Make Money coaching program, but more importantly, I'm a positive psychology coach, which means two things. Number one, on a daily basis, and especially on this, what is it, Wednesday today? On this Wednesday, how happy are you feeling? How happy are you feeling? It's that simple. Then number two, how fulfilled are you feeling today? When those two things to come together, you feel like you're living in full happiness and full fulfillment. You don't need a positive psychology coach, baby. Just live your life to the fullest. Now, this is the thing. I want to ask you, I don't know how we're gonna answer this. Maybe we're gonna answer together in unison. Maybe we're gonna answer separately. But Rachel and Kyle, I have the question for you today on this Wednesday. Are you feeling good and living in your full purpose?
Yes.
Hell yes.
And my answer to that is sex. Sex. Now this is the thing, y'all. If y'all are feeling Rachel and Kyle, if you're living to your full purpose right now, Rachel and Kyle, I want you to raise your hands with me. Raise your hands, and I want you to make a heart. Give us some hearts. Let us know you're alive. You don't have to live behind that screen, and you don't have to live life feeling like, yeah, I'm happy, and not share it out. Share it out. Let us know that you're alive. Yeah, I'm seeing a couple people right now giving us some hearts. Thank you very much. Christina, it is good to see you today. Paul, it's good to see you. Now, here's the other thing. When it comes to positive psychology, a lot of people think that it's like Taco Tuesday every day, unicorns, rainbows, Skittles raining from the sky. Skittles raining from the sky. It's not about happiness all the time. It does get shittle in your life every now and then. We have the ups, the downs, and the all arounds. That is what positive psychology is all about. That is what even I would contend to say relationships are all about. It's not 24/7 shits and giggles. There are shittles involved in it, right?
Yeah.
So this is the thing. If you all woke up today, if one of you woke up and you're like, you know what, Cordon, I was feeling it yesterday when you were on with Alonto. I was feeling happy, but for some reason today, maybe you ate some bad shellfish. You're like, I don't feel good today. I'm just not happy today. Something is off. That's cool. Or maybe you've been working in a job your whole life and you're like, you know what? That gave me full purpose. And for some reason today, it feels off. Or you've been in a relationship and you're like, man, this relationship has given me full purpose in my life. And today it feels off and I don't want to address it. I feel shameful talking about it. That's okay. That's part of your journey. Your heart beats like Rachel, Kyle, mine, Christina's, and everybody else tuning in right now. Give us a thumbs up. Let us know that you're living life to its fullest right now, because that is part of your journey, y'all. Oh, now this is the thing. This is the last thing. This is the thing. This is the reason why I do positive psychology work. This is the reason why I get on the golden mic every single day. This last reason, whether you're an up, you're a down, you're a shittle, you're a skittle, you're a 1, you're a 10 on these scales, doesn't matter. If you feel optimistic that tomorrow, no matter where you are today, that tomorrow is going to be a better day than today, that you're going to grow, that your relationship is going to grow, that you as an individual are going to continue to grow, and that it's just going to get better and better and better, no matter where you are. There's another button down there, and I want you to slowly move your finger to that button. I see you, Rachel O'Rourke. I want you to move your finger to that button, Rachel O'Rourke, if you're feeling optimistic. And Rachel and Kyle and I are going to do the same thing. It's this button. It's the wow face. Make that way wow face, Rachel and Kyle. Make it, Kyle.
Is that like the double hands back? Like the
It's our first 3-way wow face on the Golden Mic Live. With that said, and with all the shittles and with that crazy opening, let's just get to it. Let's get to it. Rachel and Kyle, it's been good to get to know you. We've missed each other a few times with your launches and me being sick and all this other stuff. But we're here now. We're here now. And we all want to know, what is y'all's story?
Oh, man.
So you got 3 hours, right?
So, shall we start when we first met?
Yeah. So we worked in restaurants together and didn't like each other when we met.
We hated each other when we met.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
And fast forward, we ended up, starting to like each other.
Yeah.
And then we fell in love, like in a romantic comedy. So stupid.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Just dove right into. It wasn't even like, oh, is this a good idea? We're going to do long distance. I don't know. This is kind of a weird thing. Nope, we just dove right into it.
It was one of those things people had always said to me, like, oh, when you'll know, like when you know. And I was like, okay, bullshit, whatever. Like,
no,
I knew.
Absolutely true.
Wait, did you two know at the same time? Was there like this moment where you both were like, I used to hate you, but really? So take us back to this moment.
Well, I don't know if we have different ones, but I remember that, the dislike had kind of subsided. We were working together, opening a restaurant and training all the employees. And so we become like kind of close and friends. There was like some flirtation. And then on our 1 day off, because you only get 1 day off in this restaurant opening out of like 30 days, we went out to the beach because it was nearby, out to Malibu. And we're driving out on this little single lane road out to Malibu. And Rachel and I are realizing that we have super similar like life experience and pasts. And, we both traveled to Israel around the same time of our lives, exactly 1 year apart. And we had all these similarities. And I was like, holy shit, this girl's like incredible. I think I need to be around her a lot more. And that was our very first date on December 6th.
Yep. And then we had our first kiss that night. And, then
the rest is history.
The rest is history. So that's like the personal story. Okay. And the professional story was basically this whole time that we were opening restaurants and going through things, I was getting my master's degree and my hours to get my therapy license. So I'm going all around in California. You have to have 3,000 hours of face-to-face psychotherapy to be eligible to take your state licensing test. So it's a lot of fucking hours. Am I allowed to curse on here? Are we good?
Late.
Right. Okay. I know. I'm like, sorry about that.
It's okay.
So I get my license. I was so excited to be in private practice, to be able to see clients. And very soon after starting, I would come home and I was complaining to Kyle. And I wasn't complaining about the work. I loved my work. But I found a gap. And the gap was that people were coming in for therapy when they didn't need therapy. They needed information, and they needed a safe space, and they needed support. And Kyle had this brilliant idea, which now, hindsight being what it is, you can look back and like connect all the dots. But at the time it was like, what's is happening? Random. I don't understand. Kyle had this idea to put all of these things that I was teaching people into a packet. And he was like, create like a curriculum, because I was teaching in a master's program at the time. And he's like, just like you would for one of those classes. And I told him, like, well, I need help, because if I write it down, it's going to be like, research says yada, yada, yada with a citation, and nobody wants to read that.
Nerd.
You need to read it.
Nerd alert. Nerd alert. So Kyle helped me kind of translate the psychobabble and research into like food metaphors and analogies about cars and all of these different things. So I started handing out these packets that, Kyle was like secretly helping me make on the side. Yeah. And then people stopped coming into my practice.
Turns out giving them the tools kind of fixed a lot of stuff. So weird.
We were like,
were you giving away the secret sauce for free too?
Yeah. That's exactly what was going on. And I was like, okay, so this is great, because we're fixing one problem and people are getting way more effective work than, but it also sucked, because then all of a sudden I had no income and I had to pay rent for an office and like eat food. And we were both like, so what do we do? And Kyle was like,
sex.
Yeah, exactly like that too.
So Kyle was like, well, why don't you just start like teaching people the packet, but have them still come in so that you're still seeing them? And I was like, oh, you're smart. Like, you have a good...
Never before in our relationship had she said that.
Well, I wanted to bring that up because so much in terms of when it comes to spaces, right? A lot of people will think that either you're broken or you're optimal, right? And so whether it be mental health or relationships or whatever it is it's almost like you're either in a disease model and need therapy, or you're not in that disease model and people automatically think that everything is fine. So I do love this gray area in the in between, where it's like most of the people who live their lives are like saying, you know what, like shit hasn't hit the fan. It hasn't gone shittles yet. But also at the same time, like I can't necessarily say that I'm living the dream right now. Like I'm living okay and I'm getting by. And for the majority of people, what do we need to do? And this is a call to action to everybody watching. Like, what do we need to do to help people move from that space of being okay to flourishing? And I think that's a brilliant thing. And sometimes people don't need to hear the psychobabble.
Right. Yeah. Right. And we don't all need that. We just don't. It's kind of like if you have a headache and you go to the doctor and they're like, well, let's just try to perform surgery and then we'll see how it goes. Instead of like, here's some Advil or like,
see if this helps.
Here's an essential oil or anything else. It's like going so far without needing all of that. And do some people need therapy? Of course. Like there is a time and place, 100%. Mm-hmm. But the majority of couples that were coming in, because that was my specialty, was couples. The majority of couples that were coming in did not need therapy. They just didn't know how to communicate. And what Kyle and I realized through putting all of this these packets together was that nobody teaches us how to communicate, and that I had taught Kyle only because of my degree. And we were like, well, this is stupid. Like, you have to get a master's degree. And I was halfway to a PhD at the time. And I'm like, so I have to have half a PhD and a master's degree and a license to practice therapy in order to communicate effectively in my relationship.
Yeah.
Something tells me that's a really high entry point.
Well, I think that's the thing with a a lot of pieces, right? And it's not even a lot of times with higher education, it's not even the books that you're studying, but the fact that you're constantly thinking about the topic that makes you an expert in it, you know?
Yes.
And then you get so pulled into the verbiage and all this other stuff, you find yourself disconnected from the majority of the public because you're using statistical analysis and empirical data, right? So I think it is really interesting and awesome that you can still pull it into a metaphor that's palpable and digestible for so many people. I wanted to jump right in. Elizabeth Palmer, you know a little bit about higher education.
Yes.
Even working cars need maintenance. Relationships are no different. Yes. Oh, she jumped in too.
100%.
She jumped in and said it's too damn late. Who doesn't love an F-bomb live on the show? Who doesn't love an F-bomb on the show?
Who doesn't
Christina,
mind?
you're absolutely correct, Christina. There is a new product coming out called Shittles, and we're going to feed it to you, and you're going to love it, and you're going to buy it, and you're going to want some more of it. Shittles. Sponsors, proud sponsors of the Golden Mic Live.
I think we're gonna need to create those. Actually,
I mean, yeah, is it like little poop emojis that are actually flavored like Skittles on the inside?
But they're Shittles.
Yeah,
but they're Shittles. They're candy coated crap. And isn't that what most people are fed today? Candy coated crap, right?
Yes.
100%.
What a pivot! What a pivot!
Amazing.
So given the fact that most people are fed candy coated crap, I don't want the candy coated crap today. I want the how the hell can I communicate in my relationship, and why can't I do it right now? Like, what's going on? What's going on? Talk to me about it. Like, you know, you were talking about your education. You were talking about working together. Talk a little bit more about this. Go further with this.
Well, I think that I'm lucky to be around Rachel with her education. Well, I'm lucky to be around Rachel for a variety of reasons, but especially with the education and being able to kind of get this information from, an accurate, reasonable source. And a lot of people don't get that option. This isn't taught in schools. There's no communication in your relationship class. And when I was really trying to go to college, I tried really hard many times. And I took every communication course available to me at every given school, no matter what. And it was argumentation, debate, public speaking. There's no way of teaching people how to communicate in the relationships out there. And so the resources that a lot of people have are it's media, it's television, it's radio, it's movies, which is just a really piss poor example of relationships. You watch like Friends or How I Met Your Mother or any of these like comedy TV shows that have people in relationships as like the focal point. And the communication, it's funny, it's great, and we all enjoy watching it. But when you break it down, it's a terrible example of how to actually be in a relationship.
Well, and also your work with men speaks to this too.
Yeah, I mean, I do some working with men on called Modern Masculinity, where they kind of help understand their own masculinity and what that means. Because again, guys, for one half of a traditional heterosexual relationship, they're coming from like this 1950s standpoint that was taught to us by our fathers and their fathers, where it's just a mask of masculinity, to quote someone else's book, but it's just a really
don't cry,
unfair, man up, tough it out, which doesn't really create a good communicator over time.
Well, and then you get into a relationship and your partner's like, why aren't you crying? Share your emotions. And they're like, wait a minute, for like 21 years, I was told that was bad and made me weak. And now you want me to start sharing my feelings with you? It's
a confusing place.
That is so interesting, because that idea of this sort of antiquated notion of masculinity. Oh, look at, you're bringing out the PhD in me. The antiquated notions of like masculinity though. But like just the idea that like, dude, I don't share. I don't talk about this shit.
Right.
And then I actually like go into the bathroom and I'm like, like, what's wrong with me, Cordon? Like, right. And then I come out and I'm all strong. Right. Yeah. And I'm like, right. It's so interesting, and I grew up watching the TV shows like I'm thinking about there's this show with Tim Allen. Like music, like
Home Improvement. The sound
and like I remember that, and I remember like the ideas of sort of masculinity that that were being imprinted into me, and sort of how that's still kind of showing up, or even in Friends. Like it is really interesting because They make it very obvious that the two, there's two participants, but they're arguing the whole time. And then after the commercial, they're making out and they're together and the show's over.
Yes.
It's like,
oh yeah.
Wait, how did you get from point A to point B? Right?
Yes. And that's the piece that's just left out of everything.
Right.
And what I find so interesting is I love watching a couple hash it out. I mean, obviously, because I do what I do, but I love watching that. And I feel like if it were actually portrayed in our television, our movies, our media, then we could get a sense of, oh, okay, so there is a discussion, at least acknowledging that it's there. Like, even if they're not going to portray it super accurately or super, perfectly, at least it's showing that there's some sort of discussion.
Right.
And not just like, yay, commercial break, now we're having sex.
Yeah, brought to you by Shittles, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's and sex. But I think the thing is that it's become a societal expectation, right? That we're supposed to subliminally know that we get from point A to point Z, and then you cut to the credits and everyone lives happily ever after.
Yep.
Right. And it doesn't show like all the ups and downs after that,
Mark, when I was little and my mom would read me bedtime stories, at the end, it would say, and they lived happily ever after. And she would add with an occasional argument. And like literally from birth, that was what she read to me. And it was something that I think it was so important to hear because nobody lives happily ever after. Like, we have all the tools and that we still fight. Like, we still get in arguments. Conflict is just a way to grow closer together.
100%.
So you two still fight? Is that what you're saying?
Of course.
Of course.
Okay, what was the last, I call bullshit on that. What was the last fight that you guys were actually in? What is it like?
Okay, the last like intense one, because bickering everything.
I'm trying to remember.
Would be you.
Okay.
That was so. Let me paint you a picture of this beautiful morning. So we're driving across the country because we've had this whole nomadic summer.
This is like the beginning of our nomad too.
Yeah, we're leaving Denver. We're spending the night in Salt Lake City, and then we were driving from Salt Lake City to California. So we wake up super early in the morning in Utah. I
think it's like 4 a.m. is when we get up.
It was too early, just too early. And I don't even know what happened in the room, but I started getting snippy, and then
I think I was snippy first because I was super tired, and then I think that you were snippy, but there's no coffee to be had like in our building, and that was the real point of contention.
And then I was upset because of where we were going to go for coffee.
Oh, yeah.
Fast forward, and this is how fast you can get flooded. And for those of you who are like, what the heck is flooding? It's like when think of like a wave flooding your brain, and you're so overwhelmed with chemicals that like you can't.
Yeah, flooding's when you say stupid shit to your partner.
Yeah. Or freeze up.
Yeah.
Like it literally triggers the fight or flight response, and you can't. So I don't fight when I get that. I flight. So I went.
That also like where you're seeing red?
Yes.
Like, it's like, okay.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. And usually when you're flooded, that's the best time to take like an adult timeout.
Little breather.
To really actually let your nervous system like calm back down so that you can actually think clearly. So we did not do this because we were not thinking clearly because we hadn't had coffee and it was 4 in the morning. So I flight.
And it's also a brain response too. Like it's part of human behavior, right?
Yes.
When you're talking about fight or flight, that's a natural thing that happens to everybody.
100%. 100%. So I flight off. I go sit in the, like in a hotel, when you walk in, there's like that front area that has like the bell carts pushed to the side. Yeah. So I go in there and I like sit down on like the cart and I'm like, oh, fucking, like I just like mumbling to myself on the cart, and I see Kyle outside like pulling the suitcase
I'm, like,
all
packing
fast.
This car up all angry.
He's like shoving our shit in the car. Yeah. That's a perfect example of what was going on. So I walk out there and I was like, hey, and he turns around and he's like, what? And I just look at him and I flip him off and walk back in.
No,
I gotta hurt him. Like, you can walk back to California.
Nice. This is in front of it. This is in a public space.
Just in the parking lot. Yeah.
4 a.m. Salt Lake City parking lot.
Oh my gosh.
And we were like, okay, all right. So I came back out. I wanted coffee enough at that point to get in the vehicle. And I was like, let's just go get coffee. And it was silent.
Fortunately, the place we were going to coffee was fairly close.
Yeah. So we get coffee. I'll let you take it.
Well, so we get coffee quietly with each other. You know, we had to wait like 5 minutes for the Dunkin' Donuts of all places to open up because that's the only thing available. And we get coffees.
Now, was your hair still as perfect as it is now, or was it like all messed up? Like, I can't.
I'd say a medium.
It was a medium? Okay, because I imagine you waking up like a Ken doll with that perfect hair.
Oh.
It is far from this. It's usually a little curly and all over the place.
Okay, gotcha.
We have some good Kyle bedhead photos.
Oh yeah, like an Instagram Kyle in the morning series, like more coffee and before a shower. So we get our coffee and we're like kind of snippy a little bit still. It's like, what kind of coffee do you want? I don't care. What are you getting? Whatever. It's like some stupid shit. And we ended up getting in the car and we're like, okay, we got to go no matter what. Like, we can't keep doing this. We have to at least get the direction we're going and we can figure it out in the way. So we get in the car, take a sip of our coffees to kind of, you know, get some energy in the brain. And it's kind of that deep breath, like, okay, this is why I was upset. I'm sorry for what I said. And then Rachel said pretty much the same thing. And then we talked for about 20 minutes about it. By the time we hit the actual outskirts of Salt Lake City, about 15 minutes later, fight was finished. We were on the road. We're happy to be together. We had talked it all out.
Started singing Hamilton.
Yeah, put on some Hamilton and enjoyed the sunrise over Salt Lake. And and now we're laughing our asses off about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty amazing, and I think the thing is a lot of people will hold on to that, and it becomes animosity or
100%. Well, okay. I think that what happens is that, you know, and it's the conscious decision that we made in the car to, I don't want to be mad at Rachel. I don't want to be mad at my wife. That sucks to feel. So the only way to actually not feel mad is to talk about why you were upset and to feel understood with each other, so you can look back and be like, okay, that was a fight. We were upset about these things. Are you going to choose to be upset about these things forever? No?
Yeah.
Okay, then we can figure this out.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that's really interesting is when those things have happened to me, I know that both sides, we don't want to fight, but we don't know how to not let go of this right now.
Yes.
You know?
Well, there's a sense of pride attached to it. So, you know, it's pride and vulnerability, right? And those are two things that are really hard to be side by side. And it's this internal protection of wanting to stay safe of, well, if I apologize, then I'm being vulnerable. Or if I acknowledge that I did something wrong, I lose my pride. Yeah. And you know, it's one of those things that's like, okay, at the end of the day, do you value your ego more or do you value the relationship more?
Yeah.
And if you don't value the relationship more, in the long run, it's not going to last. It might be okay here and there, but in the long run, the relationship has to come over your pride. Of course, like, unless we're talking about, you know, verbal abuse or something like that, where like, you know, then the relationship's not healthy. But like in a healthy relationship, it has to come before pride, and we have to feel comfortable being vulnerable.
Oh, and that's one of the biggest challenges I think that a lot of guys have in relationships is, like we were talking about just earlier, that a lot of guys grow up thinking that being told vulnerability is a weakness. You know, you're vulnerable to something. You're easily, damaged or hurt by something if you're vulnerable. But in context of a relationship and being with someone that you're in love with and you want to spend your life with, vulnerability is like the strongest thing you can have.
And it's sexy AF.
And it's sexy AF.
Sex.
Well, I think one of the things too is to, just to throw this out there as well. Like, you know, there's a lot of unlearning and learning that's going on at the same time, right? Like, so we've picked up things maybe as kids or things that we're seeing on the media. We're unlearning them. I'm learning to be more vulnerable. And you know what? Like, I'm going to open up to my partner. I don't want to fight anymore. I'm going to put myself in a vulnerable place. Then all of a sudden they go, bam, right? And I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have become like, does that make any sense?
Yes, 100%. 100%.
So when it comes to the pride and vulnerability piece, how much I think there's so much where it's like, it's important to start a relationship with these amazing communication pieces, but also for those of us who are in the middle of it now, and we're like, yes, pride and vulnerability, that makes sense. But now how do I go into this? How do I actually go into this? And when I make myself vulnerable and my partner automatically stays in the fight or flight mode and just stays in the red, or they see this as an opportunity to attack me, do I stay vulnerable? Do I let them just chew me up?
Such a great question.
Yeah, really.
And what I would say, and I, of course, sorry if I...
No, go ahead.
I didn't want to cut you off. I would say having a conversation about what pride and vulnerability mean to both of you when you're not in that red space is the most important piece. So if you've been together for, 1 year, 2 years, doesn't matter. If you've been together for any length of time other than like a month, have a conversation like, hey, so I know that when we fight, we both don't like it. And I was watching this video on Facebook and they started talking about pride and vulnerability. And I thought that it would be really cool if we could have a conversation about what you think those things mean in terms of our relationship.
Oh,
and bringing it up as a topic of discussion.
That's awesome. I'm hearing two things here, and maybe you can tease this out. I'm hearing a certain amount of sharing and listening that's going on. Is how much of putting into what we're not educated on, how much of the in-between from going from point A to point Z, where the Shittles commercial, suddenly we skip to the ending of the story. How much of that is sharing and listening?
All of it.
Yeah, 100%, 101%.
Okay, 101%. Then talk about the sharing and listening piece a little bit.
You want to talk about sharing or listening?
I was going to talk about sharing and listening.
Perfect, go
both
for
on
it.
Little pieces.
You do you, babe.
Well, I mean, both are so important, and it requires respect between partners more than most things because, and it also takes learning too. I mean, these are muscles that a lot of people don't flex very often. We flex our sharing muscle pretty often. So sharing is easy for a lot of people, but listening can be really challenging because we often can even be trained to listen to respond rather than listen to understand, which is, a huge problem when someone's trying to be vulnerable and trying to share like something about how they feel, and the other person's listening to each sentence and trying to create a response instead of paying attention what the next sentence is and the next sentence, and maybe trying to empathize, like, why are they sharing this with me? What's going on behind the scenes for them that they may be bringing this to me in this way? Like, be curious about what the other partner has to say, because only that way are you really going to want to listen and understand. So I think the curiosity is a huge part of sharing and listening, because both parties are really curious about what the other's going to have to say and how they're going to listen to each other. So it's so important to do often with your partner, because we're constantly changing and we're constantly liking new things.
That makes so much sense, that we are oftentimes trained for a response, right? And how many times, for those of you who are watching live or in the replay, have we said, yeah, I get what you're saying, but right? And the thing is, it's almost like we have an agenda for what we want to say, regardless of whatever it is that person is saying. It's like, yeah, I see you, but like, I'm rehearsing the perfect thing that's going to like win this argument right now.
Yes.
So
I'm glad you said that exact word, win. If you try to win anything in your relationship, only your relationship loses.
Ooh.
Good one, right?
Truth bombs by Kyle.
Golden mic
Mic drop.
You don't need a golden mic today. No golden mic for you. Shittles just gave me another $2,000 to keep this show going. I gotta repeat that again. If you feel like you need to win in the relationship, the only thing that is losing is the relationship. Is that what it is?
Basically,
yeah.
Got it. So I mean, and it's funny because like we do put ourselves at odds, and we do think that we have to win, and we do think that we have the perfect solution when the solution is curiosity.
100%.
Yeah,
and the solution isn't one-sided. And that's also the thing that we forget, is that if we really truly, if the true desire and intention is to come up with a solution, then we'd be truly listening with our partner, because it's not a solution. It's not a joint solution if it's just coming from you. And we're not going to give a good suggestion for a solution if we don't know what the heck the problem is to begin with. And if we're not listening to our partner, then we don't know what that is. And, Mark, you know this, like on a physiological level, when we're listening and coming up with a response, like we can't do that. Our brain actually doesn't work that way. So when people say like, oh yeah, I was totally listening, it's bullshit. Like it's literally like biologically it's BS, and not because you're not trying or not because you're not good at multitasking, but like because you have a human brain and the human brain is not capable of doing that.
Now, I wanted to throw this out there. Like if you're picking up signs that like your partner isn't listening and they're like, I'm totally listening to you, is it your responsibility, or can you interject and say, look, honey, I need you to listen to this piece, and or like, is that your responsibility, or is that their responsibility to grow as a listener?
Both. Both. I would say that if, you're using I statements, which are not just sentences that start with I, which is a huge misconception.
Big time.
But if you're actually using like proper I statements, and you can say, I feel hurt when you don't listen to me. And when your partner responds with, well, I was listening, you can say, okay, well, it didn't seem that way. Would you mind just repeating back to me what you heard so that I can make sure I'm communicating properly and the way that I want you to hear it? And then when they can't repeat it back, then they've realized it themselves. And if they can, then it's like, oh, okay, well, I just learned that my partner can listen and look like they did right then, or like whatever indicator it was that they weren't listening.
Yeah. And I think what you're talking about, there's a certain amount of respect also, like when, you're pushing through these challenging things. And, there might be an indicator that, there's some clarity in the listening that could be happening. You don't just go and pop off and say, fucking told you so. Told you so.
Yes.
There's a stop laughing, man.
I can't help it.
This is me. Told you so. Told you so. I put up my hands sideways, up and down.
Just
right? I would love to see in the middle of an argument. Just told you so.
Kyle's gonna do that next time. What? Sex.
Sex. I just wanted to break it up for a little bit, because we are getting, I don't know if I gotta totally do this show again, like with you guys, because I feel like this is like, do you remember that show in the 90s, The Love Line with Adam Carolla? I feel like this is that, but like an awesome version of that. We got our girl Tanya coming in, 3 of my favorite people in the same place.
Hi, Tanya.
Allison's good to see you. Loving the topic today. Loving on the topic. We're glad that you're here. Natalie, so something that I've learned to do when we are talking about something is to ask him, so what you are saying is, instead of just listening to respond.
That's reflecting. Beautiful. That's awesome. That's reflecting. That's awesome.
Reflecting. Reflecting, Natalie with the reflecting. Plus 10. Allison coming back. Holy crap. Boom on that one. Don't even remember that. It's probably that whole thing with the whole winning thing.
Probably.
Yeah.
Elizabeth is coming with never you versus your partner, always you and your partner versus the problem.
Yes.
Love that, Elizabeth.
Love
that's awesome.
that. And that's that team mentality of
Hell yeah.
Do you want to stay in your relationship? If so, like, why are you screaming at them and calling them names? Like, it's a pretty big, like, at the end of the day, like, why would you treat the person who you want to be with forever like that? And it's not to say that we don't all break down and have our moments. Like, I flipped Kyle off in the parking lot, not my finest moment, you know?
Right.
But because the overall scope of our relationship has more positives than negatives, he's able to have more of a positive sentiment towards the whole thing and is easier to say, okay, I do accept your apology.
Yeah.
Well, and you know what here, when you're putting sort of the relational, the mental, and the sex together, like you can really see how some of these things can be illusions for really taking care of the relationship. So like it could be fighting like 24/7, fight, and then we make it up with sex, right? And that's not, it's like I love you, I hate you, sex, and then everything's fine until the next fight again, right?
Yeah.
And so in many ways, those things aren't really being addressed. It's not us versus the world, it's us versus each other, and then we come together for sex. And then we break apart again. And so I love the way that you guys are addressing this with just the idea of listening to each other. Anything on the idea of sharing more now? Because it does sound like they're two separate things they're two great things that taste great together, like the Wrights, that you guys are like peanut butter and jelly, how does the listening and the sharing come together now? The sharing piece, what do we want to think about with that?
Well, the sharing piece comes back to that vulnerability, right? And it's hard for many of us to share how we're actually feeling. And the reason why I mentioned I statements earlier is because so often we'll have couples that we work with come in and be like, so yeah, I've totally been using I statements and it's not working. And I'm like, okay, why don't you show us what you're doing? And they're like, okay, I feel like you went blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, whoa. Rewind. Not an I statement.
I think you're a dick.
Yeah.
Like, just because you said I first doesn't make this an I statement.
Or I feel like you're the one that's da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, no. Not a feeling. We're not trained well to be able to identify our own emotions. And so it really comes down to two pieces, which is being able to identify how you're actually feeling and then being able to share that in a way that your partner can hear. So I feel sad when you don't call me on your way home from work, right? Instead of, I feel like you don't give a shit about me. That's very accusatory. Even though you're still saying it's your experience, you're not using that emotion. And so that person's defenses are going to go up like this.
Yeah, they're going to put their walls up because they feel blamed or attacked by something that you're feeling.
Instead of, I feel sad when you don't do this, which is usually what's underneath it. Right. And then give them what you want. Like, I'd really like it if you called me on your way home from work.
Yep. And I think one of the things that's coming up is again, how much like cultural, just so much sort of how much as a culture, it tells us to repress those sort of statements, right? And so when they actually come up in the like just status quo, they're volcanic, they're eruptive.
100%.
Gotcha. Yeah, big time.
And if it's more practiced, if it's on the daily or, every other day, it's like, I probably tell Kyle how I feel like 80 times a day, like that, not even an exaggeration, because it's a muscle. Like the more you're used to flexing it, you just flex it. But if you're not used to using it, it's not muscle memory yet.
Then tell him right now. We haven't heard in the last 50 minutes how you feel about Kyle.
Oh, okay. I feel excited to be here with Marc and doing this with you.
Thank you. I hear that you're excited and happy to be here with both of us.
Reflection.
Love it. Love it. Love it. And I feel grateful for having both of you on.
Oh,
I feel supported by both of you in this video we're doing right now.
I love it. So I wanted to throw out again, Allison is coming back. Oh my gosh. Yes, Rachel, I remembered. How do we want to treat the person we love the most is so important. We got Melanie coming in from California. Ooh, good. The mental and the sex. How that doesn't work. That's good stuff. She just described herself. Someone as peanut butter and jelly.
That's awesome.
Yellow heart.
with shittles.
And with the shittles, right? And she's laughing at the I statements, you know. Well, the universe thinks you're a fucking asshole.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's not an I statement, it's the big truth. Allison, sharing is the reciprocal part of seeking to understand, which is missing in so much of the wider world. It's just easier to believe your perceptions than to have the conversation, right? Oh, the assumptions that we sometimes make, right? And then Elizabeth is coming back. When I was doing family therapy, I taught what I called emotional literacy, because people are so often completely at a loss for finding the words for their feelings. You'll notice how often people say, I felt like, and then complete the sentence with a thought.
Yes. And those are not the same as feelings.
No.
And then what happens is we'll have people come to us and say, well, my partner doesn't care how I feel, or my partner doesn't believe how I feel. And what's happening is they're saying, I feel, just like she was saying, but finishing it with a thought. And so all the partner's saying is that they disagree with that thought. But because it was framed with I feel, they're saying they disagree with my feelings. But those aren't feelings. Feelings are emotions.
Okay, so I think this is the perfect time to talk about some communication scripts that you got for us.
Yes. I'm so excited.
Nice pivot.
So I've got a link for everybody up there. Talk to us about these scripts, and if you're watching the show right now, I also have the link in our show notes right now, and I'm gonna put them also in our comment box, so you cannot miss these things. Talk to us about them.
So these are our communication scripts. These show the user of the scripts, I guess you'd say. Really how to guide a conversation between you and your partner using I statements correctly, identifying emotions accurately, and really how to structure difficult conversations when you really don't know where to start. We worked on these scripts. I think it was one of our first things we did was actually these communication scripts. So they've been with us for a long time, and they're great. They're a really healthy way of navigating a difficult conversation, like an argument.
There's 4 different scripts, and they're kind of like Mad Libs. Yeah. And then at the back of the packet, there's a feeling sheet with like different faces. And there's probably like 30 different emotions on there. And you can literally look, we have lots of clients who have them on their fridge.
It's true.
And like, they'll take them down and you can look and it's like, okay, I feel, and then it's blank for the emotion. And you look at the feeling sheet and you're like, confused. I feel confused. And then you finish the script. So it's really handy, especially with like what you were talking about, Marc, when one person in the partnership is trying to be vulnerable and share, and the other person isn't sure what's going on. It's really helpful to say, hey, I have these scripts. Can we try using these to communicate around this topic and do it together as an experiment?
Well, who doesn't love like Mad Libs, emoticons, and sex? Like,
right? And that's pretty much like everything that's in there.
Well, yeah, and we have the feeling sheet because another odd thing that we try to teach our kids, which is frustrating, is that there's like 6 emotions. There's like happy, there's really happy, there's sad, there's like really sad, there's angry, and then like medium or whatever. And there's, it's like the prime colors versus the whole spectrum of colors. There's shades of red. There's hints of orange. There's so many different emotions we can feel that it's important to be able to understand there's more than just like the 6 main ones we always get taught. So that's why the feelings sheet is so helpful.
Yeah.
And what's also really amazing about it is it's so intuitive, because the part of our brain that is the center for emotions is not linked to our ability to communicate. So oftentimes we'll be able to feel something, and then someone will be like, even the littlest thing, like, tell me what you're thinking, right? It's not, they can't tell you what they're thinking when the emotion can't be expressed yet. It's like very hard to express it. So the fact that you have these in very basic forms of understanding emotions, awesome. Relationship Mad Libs, I'm in, says Melanie. I'm in too, Melanie. Who else is in? Go and get those relationship Mad Libs. Allie, I can't tell what face. I have no perceptual acuity right now. Is that laughing or crying? I don't know what emotion that is, but I'm hoping that's a good thing. And you got the script, and it's so good that you're crying 3 times over. Your life has changed.
Hey, Ken.
Ken with a high five. It's good to see you, Ken.
Is that a high five or a wave? I think it's a wave. I'm like,
Mark's
high five.
I just actually high-fived my screen. There's a big old crack in it now because of you, Ken. The bill's going to be in the mail, but thank you to Shittles for paying for my new screen. Y'all, this has been freaking awesome.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Okay. And to think that the first time we met, it was like, my name is Mark. Like, I swear to you, I can talk. And
it's true.
It's been really, really good to continue to talk to y'all. I can't wait to talk to y'all soon about sort of the mental aspect of this a little bit more. Stay tuned, y'all, if you like this conversation, because I get to go on their show and talk about my sex life a little bit, but or lack thereof. But you told me you'd be asking me a question about sex, so I'll answer it on your show.
It's true.
That's true.
So be curious. Now, this is the thing. I wanted to thank you on everyone's behalf. And I want you all to come back. I want y'all who are watching to go out, get these scripts. Let us know how it's working for you. Keep in touch with Rachel and Kyle. Obviously, there's a lot of great things going on, but she flicked him the fuck off at one point. These are real things that happen, and the fact that y'all aren't shying away from it, and you're like, yo, it's ups and downs for us too, and we practice this on a regular basis. That's why it's called practice, y'all. It's a practice, because it's not perfect every single day. So given that, we'll have you back. Thank you for having us on, or being on the show. For those of you watching, if you thought this was a great show, which you did, I want you to share this show out. I want you to share this show out with your friends, your loved ones, with anyone you think can begin the process of unlearning some of the things that they were learning from Friends, or from those 90s shows, or from antiquated systems of masculinity that we were talking about, right? Yeah. But now here's the time where we talk about what the show title is, the Golden Mic. We talk about the Golden Mic. So we're going to do this for each of you individually, because at the end of the day, there is a Rachel and Kyle Wright Wellness Center, but Rachel is still Rachel and Kyle is still Kyle. And so for both of you, a golden mic is coming down in front of each of you, right? So we've heard very clearly what the Wright Wellness Center stands for. But Rachel, for you first, I want you to imagine that a golden mic is coming down from your ceiling. And this golden mic translates into every single language all across the world. And for 2 minutes, the entire world is listening. So Rachel Wright, your golden mic is live now.
Love each other. Love hard. Learn how to be the best person that you can be for yourself and for other people. have lots of sex, but only when you want to, and do it how you want to, and don't live by anybody else's rules. This is your life, and you get to choose what that looks like, what that feels like, what you want to experience.